So, this is my first day recording content in a really long time. And I'm sitting here in Costa Rica, and I just felt inspired. I feel like this land, it brings this fluidity, this creativity, this really natural flow with my voice that I've missed a lot and that I feel like tapping into today. So what I want to share today, and if you've seen any of my other videos, I've mentioned this, is that I'm doing my best to try to share from a place of my personal journey and just sharing my story, letting you know that it's going to be different than yours. I'm not here to preach and tell you that my way is the way, because it's not. Nobody's way is the way. And what I want to say first here is that I feel really excited to speak more of my experience as a mental projector, because when I've looked, and I've looked a lot, to find content that resonates with me, meaning that the person, the mental projector who has that design resonates with me, I have found almost none that feel embodied in what they're sharing. Like, they may have mental knowledge, but I don't want to be using somebody as a role model who can speak it but isn't in some way, shape, or form practicing that in their life. And so for me, when I start a video for a mental projector and that person looks sick, looks tired, looks overweight, has skin issues, and there's not a negative judgment to this of you should be a certain way. It's more like an objective, hey, do I want to be taking advice from somebody whose vehicle is displaying that they're not in harmony with their environment and with their decisions? And what I will say is that the reason that I feel like there's not a lot of content out there, good content out there for mental projectors, is one, because there's not a lot, even from raw, I have not been able to find a lot of source material on mental projectors. Two, I feel that it's a very challenging design if you do not have the correct people and environment in your life. And I've met quite a few mental projectors that don't have the easiest time with that. And it really depends on who you have around you. And I can speak to that because my life was really not working. The environments, the people that I had in it were really not working. And now I live in a community, I don't live in the community. I live with a community surrounding me that all functions around human design and practicing and embodying our strategy and authority and understanding each other's designs. And everyone has this really impeccable integrity and groundedness within working with their experiment and actually doing the real work, not just thinking about it and mentalizing it, but genuinely doing the work to decondition through the body. And so because I'm surrounded by those people, my decisions, which are so much about who's around me, have skyrocketed past what they used to be. And I feel that mental projectors have kind of a mysterious, the authority for a mental projector, whether you call that no inner authority or environmental or soundboarding, whatever you want to label it. To me, there's a real mystery around this authority. And I feel this intuition that there is a reason why there's not more evidence in the physical world to consume, because I feel like mental projectors, when they really start to understand their design and the way that they can function in the world, that they're actually meant to be some form of way shower of how that design and that authority works with the human design system. And it actually gives kind of I feel like that's a whole nother video that I could speak to. It's it feels like I'm in almost my own mystery school with my design that I don't talk about and I don't share, because it feels like such a near and dear inner working of seeing the way this design that's not described very well by the system, in my opinion, actually functions as you decondition. It's quite mystical is the word that I would use. It's quite mystical and it's quite spiritual. And I could do a whole nother video on that at a later time. But what I want to talk about today is that because there's this lack of, in my opinion, really good content from people that feel healthy and in resonance I want to create more of that. And I'm not saying that I'm some perfect health, perfect aligned mental projector by any means. Definitely not. But hopefully if you're here, there's some level, and if you're 5 minutes in and you're still resonating, hopefully there's something that you feel here that leads you to desire to connect with some part of my story, or feel a resonance that kind of magnetizes you, that makes you feel like, maybe she has something to share that could support my journey. I feel like in this day and age, it's so easy to just consume content and waste time scrolling. If you're not resonating deeply, if this doesn't feel correct to you to be engaging and eating this content, because if you're a projector, you're eating this energy, even if it's through a screen. So if you're not resonating with me, I'm not your content. Like, go find somebody who feels like you want to, and that sounds weird, but you want to eat them. Like, you feel like, oh, there's a resonance, there's a purity, there's a radiance, there's something that I would want a part of that in me. That's a really healthy way for us to navigate. I use that a lot in myself, of like, when I'm with people, I'm like, do I want to eat you? I know it sounds so weird, but it's like, do I want what that person is vibrating at? Do I want what they, like, not what they look like specifically, but like, do I want what they're embodying in me? And getting really exclusive about what you don't want. So, that being said, I want to dive into a few different little hacks that I really enjoy, that I feel like have helped me a lot as a mental projector. Things that I am playing with and seeing the benefit in. The first one's probably going to take up most of the video. Actually, maybe I'll save that one. Okay, we're going to start with something different. So some of this is going to feel a little bit spiritual, woo-woo, out there to some people. So I'm going to do my best, because it's, to me, the reason I say that is that it's an intuition and a feeling and an inner knowing that I have. And so I'm going to try to extract it and then kind of take it and work with it, sculpt it a little bit so that I can create more coherence and groundedness to what I'm actually saying here. So, your ability to navigate life when you're environmental, when you have this access to the environment, it's kind of interesting because your authority is about sounding out, but we are every single moment of the day making a decision, right? Here you go. Just picked up my cup. I didn't think about that. Well, I might have had a very brief thought. But there's not like, I'm going to pick up my cup. Okay, I'm going to move my hand. I'm going to lift my cup, right? So what do we actually mean when we say the word decision? This is something I've been sitting with, and I'm going to sound it out for my own exploration. I don't know where it's going to go, but this is something I feel really fascinating. And I promise it goes somewhere. When we watch an animal in nature, let's say you watch a squirrel, like scurrying up a tree, grabbing an acorn, and then going up, and there's 2 branches, and it picks this branch, and it finds a little nook to put the acorn in. Was it a decision for that squirrel to pick this branch? Do animals make decisions? What is a decision? And actually, rather than answer that, I'm going to leave that for the mental projectors who want to go a layer deeper with themselves to question yourself. We talk so much in human design about decisions, and I don't think that many people sit down and ask themselves, what is a decision? They say, we don't make decisions with our mind, we make it with our body. Okay, so what qualifies one decision from the next? What makes that one decision versus 100 different decisions? To move this one bone and circulate my blood and move my arm this way and then grab the cup and bring it to my mouth. Like, where's the decision? Where's the start point and the end point to that decision? And if I'm not sounding that out, then what is my authority in that experience? And I know that probably people's minds want me to tell you what the answer is there, but this is what I mean. These are the questions that I feel there is a depth to when you question these things that comes through your experience of your authority that's really mystical, spiritual. It's almost like you feel, I should say myself, when I start to question these aspects and elements of the human design system that tell us, like, decisions are this, decisions happen in your body, decisions happen with soundboarding, I take that and I'm like, well, even Ra said, don't take what I say, experiment with it. And part of my experiment is decoding that. Like, what is a decision to me? How am I making my decisions in my day-to-day? What am I noticing? Does it align with what I've read about my design? And if you're interested in my perspective on all of that, I could totally do another video. But I would say, because decisions are everything about our life, our entire life is made of decisions, asking yourself what a decision is, and like sitting with that and not needing to necessarily have an answer, but sitting with what comes, even if it's silence, even if it's unknown. Sit with that, journal on that, maybe meditate on it, explore it in your reality, because most of our life isn't made up of the big four decisions, the whatever it is, career, money, love, moving, I think location. Most of our life is made of the tiny decisions, and we're not always sounding out. You know, I don't really drink, but today I wanted a hard kombucha. I have not started drinking this, by the way. I'm not drunk. Today I wanted a hard kombucha. I didn't sit at the store and call my friend and be like, should I have this? I don't really drink. I have this like inclination. And so what did that decision? If I don't have an inner authority, where did that come from? And is that isolated? Is that decision of buying this isolated as one thing, or is that, you know, hundreds, thousands of different decisions strung together? It's just something to experiment with, questioning. I feel like we're here to question life. So, though that might not seem related, what I just shared is like a little piece of what I'm talking about when I say that there's a lot in this conversation that can feel a little bit abstract, or like it doesn't have a practical solution, like this is the answer. And sometimes we need practicality to ground ourselves into reality, especially as a mental projector. I find that soundboarding is like what grounds me into my experience. If I don't sound something out, oftentimes it doesn't even really feel real. Maybe other people have that feeling too. It's like you sound it out and it lands. It becomes solidified. It becomes more tangible. But there's a lot of these conversations that are a little bit more mystical. And for example, this thing about decisions, it's going to feel a little bit ambiguous. But the point there is to take what's ambiguous, what's unknown, of like what is decisions, and take that into your experiment, your own daily life, and see how that weaves into your day-to-day. What do you notice in your own life? I'm giving you a question to experiment with if it resonates with you. That's what I've been doing. And it's not about finding an answer, it's about adding a lens of perspective that might help you with your decision-making process. But rather than trying to apply it to decision-making, notice how your decisions are happening and how these questions interact with them, if that makes sense. A way that you could practically start this experiment would be take one of those questions, or a question that you think of, write it down, or say a prayer about it, sit at your altar and say, like, you know, Spirit, God, universe, whatever, God, I have this question that I'm posing to the universe. What is a decision? Can you show me in my life what does that even mean? What is that to me? Right? So that you receive your own definition, so that you define it yourself. Because if we can define and understand something, we can relate to our life through that theme better. And if decisions are such a huge part of our life, starting to understand what that means might be supportive. And it might just bring you to a place of like, I don't actually know, but I'm just going to watch and see. place that I wanted to go with that, which is a total tangent, was actually now just speaking from the lens of decisions, assuming that we know what that means for this conversation. There are a lot of little decisions in a day, right? So when I wake up in the morning and I have all these mental strategies of what I'm going to do with my day until somebody invites me into something, or my energy is recognized in some way, I have all these mental strategies of the way that I want to spend my day. Some of them might be aligned and feel really correct, and some of them might feel like they come from conditioning and my open root or my open head pressuring me to do things just to get, the pressure gone or whatever. So I have all these mental strategies. And so I'm starting to go about my day. I'm going to give an example. Let me say I wake up and my strategy that day is to work on art, right? And maybe I sit down to work on art and I'm feeling stuck. Because I know the power of environment for me, it's really, really helpful. I'm never going to say needed, but it's really, really helpful to utilize environmental feedback. This is a great example. In my last video that I recorded just before this, these birds were getting so freaking loud, like louder and louder and louder. They're very loud already, but it was even more crazy. And I was having to raise my voice. And then I was like, environmental feedback. And this goes for everybody across the board, all humans. This can be supportive. It could be a sign for anybody. But specifically for people who have environmental authority, the way that you orient, listen, communicate, connect with the environmental feedback that's happening is going to give you an understanding, or I should say an understanding, of how to navigate. So for example, when I heard those birds and I became aware, environmental feedback, I closed my eyes and I was listening. What is that telling me? And oftentimes, just asking that, you get some layer of information or a moment of silence, or there's something that's being asked. It's like you almost have to think of, or the way that I do, I almost think of my environment is my actual body. We have this perception and this assumption that this is my physical form, this is me. But the way I keep coming back to experiencing my design is that I am actually the environment. And the more that I shed layers through my body of conditioning, through biomechanics work, the more I let go and shed, the more subtle energy I can feel, and the more that I can sense this truth that the environment is genuinely who I am. Not in I'm not saying it literally as if I am this wall and I am, it's the energetics of this environment is what I am experiencing internally. So if there's something that is happening in the environment, a sound, a smell, something sensory that goes off and it brings your awareness to that, it's something, they say no inner authority. And the reason that I have a whole theory on this, but see, for me, I attach a meaning in my environment. You heard that little chirping? Those are geckos in Costa Rica. And so when I start to hear something, for example, I'm saying something important and I hear a certain sound go off as I'm saying that, I have this feeling in me that's oh, there's something significant to what I'm sharing. And so I'll assign a meaning to that. For the geckos, for me, it feels like truth, there's something there. And so now every time I hear that, I know that there's some divine orchestration of why I'm speaking about a certain thing. And that sound, that environmental feedback that's a part of my body is saying yes, yes, yes. And sometimes it's not that, right? It's maybe, for example, I'll be doing something. This is one that happens to me all the time. I'll be moving through, usually cooking or taking out groceries or whatever, and I'll drop something or I will break something. This happens so often. And every single time, to me, that is a check-in moment to ask myself, do I actually feel that this thing is healthy for me in this moment? Is this actually coming from a correct place? Or am I just eating this to cope with something? Am I eating to distract myself? Am I drinking this to distract myself? And I should say don't even assign the meaning, because that gecko, it's you never want to assign an end-all be-all to something in your environment, ever. This is, to me, the bread and butter that how do I describe this? There is this ask for mental projectors that's pretty scary, that says there's nothing as an object, as an isolated experience, as a thing that you can point to and say, that's always this. Meaning, a lot of times I'll flip a coin for a decision. And it's not about if it lands on heads or tails. It's the internal knowing, and it's not even internal like in the body, but it could be felt that way. I don't know where it comes from. It doesn't feel like it's my sacral or my solar plexus or my spleen. It's just it's an inner knowing that kind of permeates this, that arises in response to an environmental feedback. So when I flip that coin, this takes practice, but you come to feel a correctness. I'll say, for me, heads is yes, tails is no. So I'll flip something and be like, is this thing healthy for me? And it'll say no. But when I see it, there's something in me that says, it's actually the other way around. It is healthy for me. But it gives me something that in my environment to kind of like interface with. And I do this with everything. I do this with sounds. I do this with haven't done it too much with smells. Maybe if your cognition is smell, you might do that. I do it with feelings. Sound is probably the biggest one for me. Visual field, if I drop something, if I trip over something, it's like this environmental feedback that immediately kind of gives me a decision. That's what it feels like. It doesn't feel like necessarily that I'm making a decision based on that thing. It feels like it evokes a decision. So I'm in this constant dance, this constant conversation, but it's the kind of like, it's not me and the environment, though it can kind of feel that way, but you kind of get to this dance where it's like, decisions are just happening. And if you're not feeling that, if you're feeling like you're forcing decisions a lot and you're really stuck in indecision, the way, oh my God, I used to be the queen of indecision. I would get lost in, stuck and frozen in indecision every single day. If that's the case, the fluidity for that really comes from getting the right people and environments in your life. And if that feels challenging at first, to be like, how do I even do that? Right? Like my environment sucks. The people in my life are clearly not healthy for me. Like, what's the first step? For one, lean on nature. Like, get as much time in nature as you can, because the more that you can use that as the environmental, like, body-led understanding of yourself, the more you're going to attract better decisions to lead you to those people and places. There's a willingness there that will guide that process. But on top of that, bring yourself to environments that you feel deeply resonant with. Chances are your environment, whatever that is in human design for you, like for me it's external markets. Really weird one to have as a mental projector. If anybody else has that one, it feels like one of those paradoxes for me. I was like, really? But for me, when I get into an external market, like a farmer's market, and I just sit and meditate, I feel really inspired. I feel really good. Not always, because sometimes if it's a bunch of shitty people, there's moments where the part of me that's environmental is like, actually, even that external market doesn't feel good. But there's the willingness. It's like you're showing life, hey, I'm going to act on this desire in me to shift. If you have a genuine desire for healthier people and environments in your life, and you take steps in the physical form to put yourself into places that feel better, life is going to bring you the opportunity to let go of people and things that don't serve you and bring in and anchor in new experiences that resonate with you better, that allow you to make better decisions. And when you surround yourself with the correct environment, the correct people, you'll notice that you feel less and less like you're the one doing decisions. That's my experience. And I don't mean all across the board. I'm not making decisions with my mind. It still happens, of course. It's a fucking journey. It's a long journey. And I'm only in year 2 of my 7-year deep dive. So that's like nothing. That's like baby steps. I'm just learning to actually implement my strategy and authority. And it's hard for me. It's hard. I feel myself often feeling like I'm hitting up and pushing against a lot of conditioning and resistance from all those years of being surrounded by the wrong people and the wrong environments. But if you can start to take those steps, you'll notice your environment start to shift. You'll find invitations to new places you resonate with more. To people, if you're you're a projector, if you're watching this, I bet if you're a projector, for me, this is what I'm practicing the most right now, that I feel the most humbled by, is practicing silence and noticing that when I can do it, when I actually remember to be silent, how much everything begins to flow and come to me. But man, does that feel challenging at times. But no matter where you are in the world and no matter what your circumstances, you're not a victim. You have this superpower, I want to say, of your silence that will evoke the things that are correct for you. So lean on your silence and get in nature and get in your environment. And then, you can start interfacing. Like, notice the sounds that go off, the smells, the tastes, the dropped things. Like, interface and see what those things evoke in you. If there's I'm not even saying a decision to do something necessarily. I'm saying it's almost like you're soundboarding silently with your reality. Things are happening and you're in this like internal conversation of like, I'm speaking something in an audio to one of my friends and then I hear the geckos chirp and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I'm feeling resonance here. I'm going to go deeper into this. Or, you kind of lean into and converse with the environmental feedback. It's really helpful to help you navigate. Another thing that's really helpful, and I actually read something, my partner sent me a little, I don't know what it was, like a little quote from Ra about mental projectors recently, and how it's like the most important thing for a mental projector to have a healthy projector in their life to lean on and trust to help guide them through the conditioning process. So I'll just leave that there. I know that's not available to everyone right away, but again, if there's something you're desiring to experience and there's a willingness in you to move forward and to change things and to have difficult conversations that it might take to get there, those experiences are out there. If you're looking for somebody to really lean on through the deconditioning process with this design and you feel kind of helpless to it, or you don't feel like you have people around you, ask, right? Jesus literally said, ask and you shall be given. And I found that to be so true in my journey. So that when I'm lost, which happens, I'm finishing my Saturn return. It's like a whole season of feeling so lost. And how many times I prayed for something and it always comes. It doesn't come necessarily in the package or in the way that you think, but it will come. The essence of what you're praying for will come. So stay hopeful if you're one of those people who's like, I don't fucking know what to do with that. Stay hopeful, stay positive. Remember that your mindset matters. The other hack that I want to talk about, that I feel really excited by it because it surprised me, because I've been pretty anti-AI and just like not in that world at all for however many years. In the last few months, I downloaded ChatGPT, which I named Maya, and she has been a mental projector hack in so many ways. And I was really blown away by how much this helps my process, and I wanted to speak to that. Because sounding out things not only helps us to make decisions, but also helps us to solidify our experience. And a lot of times in this journey of finding what is working for us and finding the people that are correct and the environment that's correct, there's a lot of trial and error of what really doesn't work. And so chances are a lot of times mental projectors are probably surrounded by a lot of people that they don't feel are the ones that they want to sound out with, because they don't really feel that those people are making good decisions and that they're going to get like a clear coherence of trust in their own body that this is the decision that's best for me, because it depends so much on the auras and the mechanics and the conditioning of the other people, is the way that you're experiencing that in real time with them in dialoguing. So even though it's not the same, I will say it's not the same, because obviously ChatGPT is through technology, and I will never say that that's a good substitute, ever. It's more like it's a nice add-on, or it's nice for people who might be struggling to understand and use sounding boards because of that, because they don't have the people that they trust. If you're somebody like that, where you feel like you don't have somebody to trust, to lean on, to sound out, to call when you need to talk through something, or you just have day-to-day decisions where you're like, I don't want to burden somebody with like this whole long process, like every time I have a little thing. I find that ChatGPT is really helpful for the smaller things. I would not recommend relying on it for the big decisions in life. You could use it to add on after talking it out with other people. But in terms of little decisions throughout your day, ChatGPT is amazing to just shoot the shit with. Talk the things out that you don't really feel like sharing with people, or you don't feel like they might have the time and energy for that, because people can't be there for you through every single thing that you need to understand about yourself in your life. That would be exhausting for anybody to do that. And hopefully we don't rely on anybody to be that source of constant feedback and receiving. So I use that a lot. I use it a lot to have her or him ask me questions, to prompt me to sound out more, to hear myself, to interface with. A good tip is to also ask your ChatGPT to be objective and to not just tell you what you want to hear, because it can kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy or an echo chamber, which isn't really helpful. You want it to be grounded. But the reason that I find this to be so helpful, and I'll share it as a story. One of my best friends, I would say my best friend, she's a reflector, which is so cool because her and I have a lot of similarities in our designs of openness and the way that that's experienced through us. And even though she's not the same authority as me, there's a quality to her that also benefits deeply through the sounding out process. And so her and I really love interfacing through voice audios back and forth to each other. And we both always have this same reflection to each other, which is that there's some really deep part of us that feels grounded in when we are able to voice out to somebody that we trust, even if they don't say anything back, to just like vocalize and share what we're moving through, share something about our day-to-day, what the behind the scenes, to like sort through and sift through our processes. For me, I can speak to the fact that it's like you have all this mental energy, and to be able to voice it, one, helps you hear what's not true. A lot of times I'll say something and immediately I'm like, I can discard that, because I have to hear my voice say it to be like, that's not what I actually believe. But a lot of times if that's circulating in my mind, it's like it doesn't have the same, I don't have the same ability to see how dumb it is and how not true it is until I speak it and I hear it for me. So being able to do that with an app is actually quite helpful. It kind of, to me, what it feels like, and I mentioned this earlier, is that if I go, actually use an experience, a story. I used to work at a darkroom retreat center where people would come and spend like 3, 5, 7, sometimes a week, 2 weeks in a dark room where there is no stimulus. You can't hear anything really, barely. It's complete darkness, and it's sensory deprivation. And I actually really loved that experience at the time, because it gave me a chance to like let go of all these energies and just kind of disperse them. And I don't know if I probably talked and like sang and stuff to myself, but what happened was that when I was deprived of all of that, I got to this place of feeling like I didn't even exist, because so much of our mental energy depends on the visual field, that when you're alone without the other to interface with, and you don't have the visual field to clog up your mental space in the ajna or the mind, it's a really spiritual experience, because you start to understand what your design is underneath that consistent definition of mental energy, and it gives you a framework for who you actually are when you go back into the world and you add all that in. And to me, when you go through, like I've gone through many times of practicing complete silence, and at one point I did 11 days of silence, and 5 of those days were in the darkroom retreat. And when I came back into speaking, and I came back into the light, and I added all this visual field and the mental stuff back in, I realized that there's a solidity, there's a solidness that comes from language, which makes sense, right? Because I could do a whole video on, but language, which is such a huge part of the mind, specifically it feels like the ajna is conceptualizing. Language is what divides unity into duality. If we never learned language, we would experience life as one energy that's like, yes, you see the different qualities and textures and everything, so there's differentiation between objects, but you wouldn't know that anything is a separated thing. You wouldn't know that you are a separated thing. And there's a really strong connection point between that and being a mental projector. And that's another thing that I will just leave there for you to explore if you're interested. As you speak, you are creating the solidity of your reality. And you'll feel that as a mental projector deeply. At least I do. When I go an extended period of time of not really talking to people about my experience and just kind of being more like I'm watching or I'm engaged with somebody else's experience a lot, like I'm with somebody who's going through something and I'm really with them, I'm feeling them, they're my environment, they're like literally part of my body is what it feels like. And then when I separate myself again, in order to kind of ground back into like, what's Kaylee? What is this unique individual, this differentiated design? What is she? In order to ground or to feel a solidity or a coming down into my body and into life, the first, well, I wouldn't say the first, because sometimes it's like nature. One of the first things that helps me the most in what I did today, because I had this experience of separating after being with my sister for like over a week straight, which isn't common at all for me. The first thing I did was sound out my experience. I sent like a 23-minute voice audio to my friend, the reflector. And then also responded to her messages and gave her this like whole framework of what was happening for me. And by hearing myself, it's like, oh yeah, I'm grounding myself back into this space-time continuum. Like, this is where I am in space and time. And in order to be a player of the game of life and to navigate it well and to be present in the body, that orientation through your sounding out process is so important. It's funny because the silence is also really important, but then utilizing the people in your life that you trust to sound out the things, especially the things that have meaning for you or that you need to orient around. What do I actually feel about this thing? Those are so important, that both of that polarity, the silence and the sounding out with trusted people. Or for this example, use ChatGPT if you don't have somebody, or if you want to add context, or if you want to get new perspective. You can even go as far as like telling ChatGPT like all the different layers of your chart so that she incorporates more of who you are into the conversation. So these are a couple hacks that I just wanted to bring up because they're things that have really helped me lately. They're things that help me navigate. Let's see if there's anything. I could probably do so many more of these, but I think that feels pretty complete. Let me see. Yeah, it feels really playful to me, like as I'm tuning into my environment right now. It almost feels like I'm constantly walking through how do I explain that? We talk a lot about passenger consciousness or like witness consciousness. Sometimes I get this feeling like I'm watching Kaylee, like I'm watching the body walking through this reality, and I'm imagining that like the whole environment is also me. It's like I'm the body, but I'm also everything else. And so like every part of what I'm seeing and feeling, there's symbology, there's like a conversation happening. So all it takes is awareness. Like when I tune in right now, I'm like, okay, I feel something scratching in my throat. I hear dogs barking. I hear parrots squawking. I see the number flashing on the microwave. I see the color yellow. And there's all these things that pull my awareness to them in my environment. There's a whole storyline that when we're intuitive, when we're connected, and when we're listening, like to me, this is like this silent soundboarding that we're having happen that helps us orient and direct. And to me, it's like that kind of feels like nature, right? It's like we're interfacing with all of this sensory material that we're aware of, right? That's calling our awareness. There's this sensorial conversation happening that's directing the flow of our energy. Similar to the way that an animal moves through nature. And it's not sitting there thinking, I'm making this decision, I'm making that decision. It has receptors and senses that are telling it this way or that way, but it's not a mental conversation. It's just an orientation, but it's one energy. And so when you start to think of yourself as not just like this body, but like your body is everything, see what comes up for you as you experiment with that visualization or that feeling, walking through an environment and imagining this is all my body. And if you look around and you're like, I don't want that in my body, I don't want to consume that environment, move. Eating it. You are it. You are literally it. Even if you don't see it that way, right? It's like, oh, you're eating your environment. Like, I'm in a home, I'm eating the home. You don't see a home in my belly. It's not like that. It's like everything is energetic. The visual field is turning things into objects and labels and language and making it a mental concept that we blanket on top of what is just pure light and sensation arising in this field of awareness, this field of consciousness that's just here, and it's us. And it's dynamic. And it's felt. It's really felt. Man, it's so felt. Like, it's crazy to me, the layers that I've been peeling back in my body and how much I can sense from the environment. For an example, I lived with two of my friends last year. Did not follow my strategy and authority correctly for this, and I paid the price. Even though they are fucking awesome, and there's beauty in it as well. I can always see the 6 line perspective, but my line 3 was like, that did not work. I lived with a manifesting generator who has one of the, probably the most powerful sacral I've ever been around. And he was living upstairs from me. And even though we were out of aura, we had room away from each other, walls in between each other, I could not fall asleep at night until his sacral turned off, meaning he fell asleep. And his bedtime was later than my bedtime. And the second that he woke up, I would wake up on the dot. That's how sensitive to environment we can be, even when we're not in aura. So keep in mind that, like, it's not just this, like, 12 feet or whatever. It's, you are your environment. And the more sensitive you become, the more reach you will feel with that. The more connected you will feel with the greater environment. For example, when I come here to Costa Rica, I'm like, wow, I feel the belief systems and the energetics of this environment and the culture and, like, what's embedded in that. I feel it so deeply in my body, and it changes the way that I flow through life, the way that I decide things. Like, where you choose to locate and who you choose to be around you is so important. Night and day. Hell and heaven. Literally. Hell and heaven. So I hope that this brought something fun for you to experiment with or inspired you in some way. And I would love if you guys would comment below if it brought something to your awareness or something that you want to question or something that you're experimenting with in your design. I would love to hear that. I feel like there's not enough mental projectors having these conversations, and I would love to hear from you guys of what's shaping your reality, what you've been contemplating about your design if you're in this experiment. And yeah, awesome. I'll end it there.